It would be great to have someone who could do our work for us, right? Someone to prevent us from making mistakes. Someone to assist with our routine professionally and allow us to devote our time to communicating with our closest people. If only we could get results without wasting our time for nothing. Unfortunately, it's impossible in real life. But wait, Light Forex Social Trading. Spend your time doing what really matters to you.
Good morning guys, how you doing? Piotr here, and this is Light Forex Global YouTube channel. 19th of November 2019, 11:15 AM CET, and it's my pleasure to be with you here today. Nothing extraordinary when we are talking about the market calendar, so I decided to go through few metals charts. We are going to discuss gold, silver, platinum, palladium. So we are going to have a look on both medium long-term perspective as well as short-term opportunities. Before we start, a risk warning as usual, guys. Please bear in mind, trading metals, especially trading metals using the leverage, might be very risky. So you should not risk the money you cannot afford to lose. You should seek education, trying to gain the experience before risking real money. However, past performance doesn't guarantee future results. As you can see, the risk warning as well. As well here on the window. Okay, so let's have a look on the charts, guys. Before we are going to discuss metals, I would like to point out one thing which might be worth to check from time to time. I'm talking about the Chinese yuan, right? From the long-term perspective. Actually, if you remember, we are watching Chinese yuan, right? When we have the live trading meetings, from time to time, we are watching Chinese yuan. The thing is that we got back and we are retesting very important 7 level, right? Now, if you remember back to 2018, right? This type of the price action we've seen here. So what happened lately? It's just the retest of this broken top of that previous consolidation, right? So in that case, further move downside to, let's say, retest 50% of that old consolidation cannot be ruled out. In that case, we are talking about the levels closer to 6.88. And in case of the Chinese yuan going back below 7, I would start to look at the gold, how the gold price is behaving. Because short term we might see weaker gold if the Chinese yuan is gonna get the strength, right? Because some part of the last gold rally was spurred by this trade wars between US and China, right? So there was some risk of sentiment buying golds because of the problems of the tensions were growing. We saw also the Chinese yuan sell off, right? So that's why even we are our discussion right now is going to be about the metals. So I decided to start with the Chinese yuan as a reference point. So it's good to have somewhere in the background and check from time to time where we are. So now I think we can start to discuss the metals, right? So let's start from the number one. Let's start with gold. In that case, we have to get back to this blue zone at the top. We discussed it many times during our live trading meetings. It's the old supply based on the breakdown in 2013 as far as I remember. Yeah, 2013. So finally, market was able to get back and retest this supply. So if you remember, we were trying from the intraday perspective, we were trying to trade a few times short side. The thing is that after quite few weeks, taking into the consideration that was or that is still possible supply, taking into the consideration that market was reacting, the one thing I'm very curious about is why the rejection is so weak, right? It's okay, it's a weekly chart. Let me hide those consolidations. We are going to get back into them on an intraday, from the intraday perspective. Just a second, guys. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 weeks of we are staying under the possible supply, right? But guys, honestly, the rejection is not that huge. If we are going to check the price action before the rejection, right? So we had this period of rally, so we broke through several possible supply levels, all right? Then we had like 1 week of consolidation. All right, and then finally the continuation to the upside, right? So Riley, base, Riley, okay? Now, we are at the weekly chart. We have this blue possible supply zone. We have this rejection going on for 12 weeks already, right? 3 months. But guys, you can answer to yourself honestly, right? Is it strong rejection? The supply we've seen here at the high, right, it was not able, the bears were, at least for now, we were not able to push through this consolidation period and below. Not saying that we have to close below that level, right? So that's the warning sign. Of course, in case of, I do not expect that, but in case of some kind of the trade deal between US and China, and honestly I do not expect that one, at least not now, but anyway, in case of what we have to understand, where is going to be the risk, right, for the bulls, for the buyers. In case of the possible, in case of the trade deal between US and China, of course we are going to see stronger Chinese yuan moving below 7 versus US dollar, right? That's what we discussed a second ago. At the same time, we might see as the market takeaway is going to be okay. One risk even is going down, so let's sell the asset we are buying as some kind of the insurance, right? That the things may go worse, and we might see deeper move to the downside on the gold in that case. But yeah, my private opinion is we are not gonna get that deal, at least not that fast, because the Trump need that deal closer to the election, right? On the other hand, what we have to ask ourselves is that if China wants to have a deal with Trump, right? Maybe not having the deal with the Trump is the one of the way to try to remove Trump from the politics, right? And then get back into the possible deal, renew the deal talks with another president. And that's the future, right? Anyway, that's what we have to talk about, and that's what we have to have in mind. So that's the weekly chart. There is no strong rejection going on. We are still above the consolidation level. We are still above the low from this breakout candle. So let's switch to the daily chart, right? And here on the daily chart, it looks even better, right? There is, of course, rejection, but you know, it's like the consolidation right under the possible supply. So in that case, you know, I've been for quite some while, I've been a bear on the gold, but looks like we might see at least retest of that 1550, all right, of that possible supply. That's how I see the things here, especially if we are going to update that chart a bit. So it's a daily chart. So if you remember the first lesson, what particular colors means on my chart. So there is as of now everything is fine on the bear side. What I mean by that? So we have 2 points to start to draw upper trend line, right? 2 points. Then usually the third is a retest, and we should see reaction. So we have like double the test of that top of the channel, rejected twice, right? And for now, previous week, right, we held the demand zone based on the 2nd of August, right? We held that demand here, okay, ahead of the breakout, pullback ahead of the breakout and rally. Okay. So that's what we held last week. I do expect one more attempt to go a little bit lower, right? I do expect that if we agree that that's the consolidation, big consolidation phase, right? Ahead of this breakdown, ahead of this breakout to the upside, all right? So if we agree that that's the consolidation phase, so I'm looking for something around 50% of that consolidation, maybe a little bit lower. In that case, a little bit lower. I'm talking about this shadows, closing and opening levels. So it's around 14.15, all right? It could be 14.15, but that also going to be the bottom of that channel. So we are going to eventually test the bottom of that channel. That's gonna be number 3. So we have 3 to the upside, we are going to have 3 to the downside, and eventually we should see some kind of the rally from that level. But the 1414 is the lowest from the bull's perspective, right? That's the, in my opinion, last line of the defense for buyers, right? I think that we might see just 1445, so retest of the swing low from the previous week, and we might start see the upward pressure from here. But anyway, 1415 as a last line of the defense, if we agree with this period of consolidation, right? Okay. So that's the last line of the defense. So let's switch lower. Let's place the line also around this swing low from the previous week, and let's have a look what we have on from the intraday perspective on gold for the buyers. All right, we are going to discuss sellers in a second. So what we have here, we had very nice recovery yesterday, right? There was at some point a little bit of the risk-off sentiment during the early New York hours. But anyway, we are back and we are retesting the weekly open. Right now, from the short-term perspective, I think that eventually the buyers should think about the weakness from yesterday, right? So either we are going to try to hold this 65 to try to jump a little bit higher, all right? Or in case of the breakdown, I think we might try to retest 1455. So in that case, from here, that's not gonna be that far to eventually to test this 1448, 1445 swing low from the previous week. Okay. Okay. So there are three possibilities short term when we are talking about the buyers. Either we are going to hold current level, which I think we are going to try to break. But then I would say that yesterday low and the liquidity below, so I would rather, from the short-term perspective, I would rather wait and see what's going to happen. And if we are going to test 1458, 1455, or if we are going to test previous week low, and that's this over-under possible setup, and that's the best solution in my opinion from the buyer's perspective. Now let's get back to the higher time frame, and let's discuss possibility from the selling perspective, right? So what we have here, in my opinion, if there are any possible supply on the gold, probably somewhere here around 1485, 1500, right? It's related to the top of that channel, it's related to the horizontal levels, it's few things here telling me that we might see possible supply around these levels, right? So from the seller's perspective, you want to see eventually a little bit higher levels, and then you may want to try to take the advantage of the possible continuation of the sell-off, where your first target is going to be what we discussed a second ago, previous week low, the swing low, something around 1450, 1445, and eventually lower levels down to 1415 on the gold, right? That could be also measured by that whole move to the downside and in case we are going to retest, right, as you can see, 1-1, nice move, 14-15. But again, I think that we are going to get the answer what next if we see the retest of previous week low, right? But as you can see, both bulls and bears could have their arguments in hand. I think, my opinion right now, that this previous week low should hold, unless something which we are not, or I do not expect going to happen, will happen, right? Anyway, that's how I see the things on the gold. From the silver perspective, we have to start with weekly as well, right? A few weeks ago, buyers were trying to push towards 20, quite strong rejection, okay? Quite strong rejection. But what I like with silver is where we are right now. And if we are talking about the latest weakness based on the weekly chart, that's the latest weakness, right? So we are testing the zone of the possible demand. Of course, it's quite wide and many things may happen here, okay? That's no doubt about it. So let's place one more line a little bit higher, around 22, because that's my final target. So already spoiler, you know what I'm looking for. That's the daily, all right? Well, I wouldn't say it's very similar to what we see on the gold, because it's not. But anyway, the move from here made lower low, lower high, lower low, right? So 1-1 from here, it looks like we might see a little bit lower levels. I'm going to take off the background color. So we might see a little bit lower level here. So what I do expect on the silver here, okay, what I do expect, it's a little bit smaller flag channel to what we have here. So a little bit smaller, small copy of that one, right? I do expect, because there is a, before that breakdown, there is a consolidation and range from the 6th of November. So that's the possible supply. So I do expect market within the next 2 or 3 days is going to try to retest that level. This supply, all right. That's what I think might happen. And then eventually market will try to break down, right? Doing this, or finalizing this 1-1 move towards somewhere 1635, right? Plus minus, okay? That's how I see the silver price action, and from here rally back at least to retest 1950, let's say. But as I've shown you before, 22 might be targeted based on what we had in the history, right? So 50% of that consolidation before the breakdown, right? So that's how I see the silver. So I'm looking to buy, but I'm looking to buy a little bit lower. But if I'm not mistaken, if my way of thinking is correct, that also sellers are going to have some arguments. So retest of 1760 could be used with tight stop as an eventually opportunity to sell, or a little bit higher levels, 70, 85, 70, 90 as well, right? So one of those two. sell off towards 1650, 1635, and eventually longs from there. Now let's try to talk about the Palladium price. Here is it looks a little bit different, right? And it's gonna be easier because now as we can see, bulls are controlling the market totally, right? Bulls are controlling the market totally. So if that's the breakout of the quite big consolidation, all right, so there is a possibility we are going to double that consolidation. So in that case, in regards to Palladium, we are talking about the levels close to 1900, so probably psychological 2000 might be in play, especially if we want to make some kind of the stop count or some kind of this strong final rally, right? So that's how I see the things from the weekly chart perspective. That should be blue color. Let's make it as it should be, right? So that's the basic scenario. As long as we are holding above this consolidation, right? So where are some risks from the buyer's perspective? Because as I mentioned, for now, total bull domination, right? Well, what we have here is 1575, 1455, 1450, and 1310, 1300 based on the weekly chart. All right. So let's switch to the daily chart. Let's have a look what we have here. There is a first warning sign when it comes to Palladium. There is a first warning sign on the daily. So finally, after the breakout, bears were able to break through the trend line. And what is important, that we holding below that trend line, right? So looks like we are talking about the possible continuation of that correction. So in that case, probably what we are going to do right here, right now, is some kind bear flag creation, okay? In that case, I'm going to make the measure of the move after the breakdown through the rising trend line, all right? And I'm going to make the measure of that move, and I think we are not gonna make more high right now, because in that case equal moves should bring us down toward 1600, and from here is not that far when we are talking about the possible demand around 1575, and here on daily we might make it even narrower, 1560, 1556, right? So we have some kind of the $20 demands, possible demand zone based on the weekly and daily chart, right? So that's what I think, that's where I think we might see some kind of the first demand in case of the move will continue to the downside, and we are going to see the breakdown from that flag, right? So that's the first. Of course, second, if we can agree that that was the consolidation, so 50%, as I mentioned, levels close to 1450 as the next possible demand, and of course bottom of that old consolidation, but that being there is going to mean that the bulls are in a bigger trouble than what we think. Of course, advanced bears may try to take the advantage eventually of that flag, but you know, if you are not that advanced, I would be very careful trying to trade against this current trend we see from the bigger picture, right? Because there is looks like more might to come. So I would be very, very cautious, and I will wait to see what's going to happen if we see the price closer towards 1575, 1555 in that case. Okay, that's at least what we should get based on this line break and the flag we are building right now. And finally, let's have a look on the chart of the platinum chart. Let's start with the weekly as well. Well, that looks a little bit different to what we've seen, what we already seen on the previous three charts, right? We are the platinum, we are at the very, very bottom. So what is going on? And I think we are not gonna make the mistake if we are before that break happened here, right? Before that break happened here, if we are going to make that thing as a consolidation, right? So we had attempt to break higher from that consolidation, we had attempt to break lower from that consolidation, and we are in the middle of the nowhere as the 50% of that consolidation been tested, rejection. So you know, overall, if you are a metal bear, so probably here is the place to be, right? Here is the place to be, as long as we are staying below 950. Okay, as long as we are staying below half of that consolidation, so it's also half of the small consolidation, 50% of that consolidation. Okay, so as long as we are below, probably if you are a metal bear, that's where you want to be. But let's have a look what we have on the shorter time frame, right? So shorter time frame looks like lately we've seen some kind of the higher low, higher highs, right? Now, last few days looks like we are trying to change into the lower highs, lower lows. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about. So the last move to the upside, right, here and here, that's where we should get the answer in the long-term perspective, what next, right? So in case we are going to see at some point in the future retest of 800, levels close to 800, that's where we should look for our answer, what next medium long term. For now, some kind of the consolidation in between 800 and 950, and probably next direction will depend on the daily close, especially two consecutive daily close, either below 800 or above 950, and that could generate the idea for what next on the platinum market. Compared to three other charts, of course, as I mentioned before, if you are a metal bear, probably the chart here is going to be the most interested, at least for now. Short term, the break short term, that was the latest consolidation, break to the downside, right? I'm gonna to make the measure of the whole move, retest, whole move. So right now looks like just stop count we've seen last week, so very similar to what we have on the gold and other metals, right? Last week pullback. So stop count, a little bit of the recovery, and now the main question is going to be, let's make it a little bit clearer. Short term, the main questions, that's the bear levels, 910, 915, bull levels, so we are narrowing a bit that range to 885, right? So because why these levels, right? Because from here right, we made, compared to this previous, I'm not talking about what we have here, to on that move from here we a little bit higher levels, we hit a little bit higher levels, right? And then there was a breakdown without pulling back. So right now, that what was supposed to work as demand should work as a supply. So that's why levels close to 915, 920 from the bear's perspective, right? And that was the demand, right, which helped us got back into the old consolidation level, right? So we broke through that level, but the recovery brought us above, right? So this type of the price action could take place, and the retest of the top, that could be the name of the game. So again, short-term sellers 915, 920, short-term buyers 885, 880. All right, folks, don't forget, we are covering the Canadian CPI tomorrow. If there are any kind of the fireworks today after the New York Open, I may schedule a last-minute stream. So please hit that subscribe button so you are not gonna miss our next meeting. But for sure, tomorrow, 15 minutes ahead of the Canadian CPI announcement, we are going to make the trading plan, and we are going to try to trade that news. We are going to try to take the advantage of the short-term price fluctuation. So it was my pleasure to cover the metals for you. Have a great rest of the London session. Have a great rest of the day, and see you around, guys. Goodbye.